Okay, the wheel of time turns and ages come and pass, leaving memories to become legend. Legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth comes again. In one age, called the third age by some, an age long, almost got it one, an age long past, an age yet to come. The the wheel of time turns and ages come and pass, leaving memories to become legend. Legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth comes again. In one age, called the third age by some, an age yet to come, an age long past. A wind rose in the mountains of mist. Look at that, I got that thing memorized. I'm too good. Okay, so book 9, 10? What book are we on? We're near the end of the Wheel of Time series, I know that. As you can see, focus. We've read it, or we've listened to it. Michael Kramer, Kate Redding do a fantastic job, as they normally do. But the thing that I have to say about Path of Daggers, which was the previous one, and Winter's Heart, is that realistically, it's just one book split into two, and there is an incredible amount of waffle in each of those books. Now, don't get me wrong when I say waffle. I'm sure on rereads, this is a fantastic bit of world building and lore building. Robert Jordan has really put some thought and time into it. I'm sure there's a dozen setups and payoffs that happen in these books and such, and they pay off things earlier on in the series and such. But in terms of reading it for the very first time, I won't lie, these two books are a massive drag, and I think a way to significantly improve them is if you just merge the two together, because they genuinely feel like one story. Or at least, they feel like one story that have had their endings reworked to make them feel like two separate stories. In many ways, this feels like The Two Towers to The Return of the King, to where you watch the Two Towers film, and it's the Two Towers book, but stretched out. But obviously, when you get to things like the Frodo, Sam, and Gollum stuff, that stuff has to be expanded upon and stretched out because they save all the Shelob stuff for Return of the King. That, in many ways, is what Path of Daggers and Winter's Heart feel like. Also, by now, you know when I refer to Robert Jordan's waffle, I don't mean that Robert Jordan is a terrible writer. I think he's a fantastic writer. I just have to keep emphasizing this for new viewers because at the end of the day, Robert Jordan is a fantastic writer. I love the way he writes, but when it comes to the overall plot progression, I do find that the Wheel of Time books are quite slow. In my eyes so far, the strongest books in the Wheel of Time series so far are the first three and Lord of Chaos. The one where Rand goes to Shadalagoth and fights Samodine. The one where he crosses the channels and stuff and then becomes King of Ilion at the end. That is one of the best books of the series. And Winter's Heart is fine. It's just a bit of a slog. It feels like it's the second half of a book, which honestly, the two books, Path of Daggers and Winter's Heart, should have just been one. I don't really have a massively strong impression of this book. There are good things, there are bad things, there are some things I like, but overall, it's not super memorable. Well, aside from the major key events, like at the end, they cleanse the Sidene, which is kind of cool. I like that concept. Right now, we're just going to go through the Wheel of Time wiki and look at the Winter's Heart page and see if reading the plot summary will jog my memory or something, and I'll mention, oh, this bit's really great, or this bit I didn't really care for. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Winter's Heart, abbreviated to WH, why? Who does that? Is the 9th book in the Wheel of Time series. It was published by Tor Books and released on November 7, 2000. Upon its release, it immediately rose to the #1 position on the New York Times hardcover fiction bestseller list, making it the second Wheel of Time book to reach the #1 position on that list, and remained on the list for the next 2 months. God, if this isn't the most like hipster look I've ever done. It remained on the list for the next 2 months. It is 780 pages long. And that I think is interesting because right now I'm listening to it, and once I have the books I'll be able to see the actual page lengths, but I feel like Path of Daggers is a similar length, which means that if you combine it, they're roughly going to be like 1,500 pages long, give or take. And in many ways, if Robert Jordan cuts out 500 pages worth of waffle, maybe like a tiny bit more, you could have just published this as one book. As in the usual style, the title of the book is incorporated into the verse quoted from the prophecies of the dragon at the beginning, and it also refers to the winter that was created by the use of the bowler winds in the prior book. I'm not reading the prophecy, you can read the prophecy. It's not a prophecy, it's a story. Plot summary. Winter's Heart consists of a prologue and 35 chapters. Oh, does it consist of a prologue? Robert Jordan and his hour-long prologues. I don't know what happened, but around book 5, he just immediately goes into these hour-long prologues, at least in terms of listening time. Michael Kramer and Kate Redding are narrating these prologues for at least a good hour, hour and a half, and it's like, Robert Jordan, just get straight into the story. How is this a prologue? You know, when it comes to prologues for me, I normally like prologues that either inform the rest of the story through either a flashback or it's a scene that takes place earlier on in the history, but in many ways, that is a very significant event and plays into the grander narrative. Robert Jordan's are just like, and characters go from here to here, and they do this, and that, and here's a random character with a different name, and here's like another character with a different name that sounds very similar, and it's like, Robert Jordan, you don't need this. This is so confusing on a first read. Many of the events of Winter's Heart takes place simultaneously with the events of the next book, Crossroads of Twilight. Perine Barra and his followers pursue the shadow Aiel, who kidnapped his wife, Aiel Bashir. I won't lie, I do feel like a lot of Perrin's stories just revolve around his wife, and he's like, where's my wife? I want my wife. Stop trying to sleep with me, what's her face? Berlin. Stay away. I love my wife. Where's my wife? She's been kidnapped. I need to get my wife. When you think about it, it's kind of similar to the show meme of but my son. But my son! But instead of but my son, it's but my wife. Elaine Tricand attempts to solidify her grip on the Lion Throne and put down rebellious nobles. Yeah, we get a lot of Elaine chapters in this one. Elaine is solidifying her claim on the Lion Throne of Andor. She is very much getting comfortable in Andor. She even goes to the extent of saying that Rand doesn't really have authority in Andor, and that she wants him to give her the freedom to rule Andor, and she will align with the dragon, but the dragon doesn't have control over Andor, even though he is the king of Ilion. Or at least was, because he's on the run. Nynaeve Almira leaves Elaine Tricand and Caemlyn and joins Rand to support his activities. That was an interesting dynamic too, the relationship between Nynaeve and Rand, because Rand is now like the king of the world. He's super powerful. Even though he was in hiding, it's like, this is not Rand al'Thor, the country bumpkin from the Eye of the World. This is Rand al'Thor, king of Ilion, king of the world, the man that has killed so many Forsaken, who has sustained so much damage through fighting the Shadow, whether it be Padan Fane's dagger, or when he got stabbed by Shamael in The Great Hunt. And it was nice to see the way their relationship has changed, because obviously, in many ways, Nynaeve is like Rand's older sister, or kind of like, yeah, older sister is probably the best way to phrase it. And so she feels very protective over Rand, but also she's like, I can't stand him when he's being very arrogant and being, you know, king of the world. And even though they have differing opinions on different things and the way they tackle things, they still care for each other, which then ultimately leads to them doing the thing they do at the end of the book. Matt Cawthon making his return to the series after his absence in the previous book, which again makes no sense just narratively in terms of trying to keep the audience engaged, because Matt disappears at the end of book 8. The Seanchan attack, he gets crushed by a wall and he's just gone, and you're kind of like, what the hell happened to Matt? Where has he been? But then in this book, Matt just shows up and he's like, hey, he's wounded, he's okay, but he's still with Tylan, and they're now traveling and doing things. Yeah, that's it. They're trapped in the city of Ebudar in Altara, which is under Seanchan occupation. He plans to escape, but in the end, his plans are disrupted by the interference of a Seanchan noblewoman named Tuon, who is revealed to be the daughter of the Nine Moons, heir to the Seanchan Crystal Throne. Matt, having heard of a prophecy about him marrying the daughter of the Nine Moons, kidnaps Tuon instead of tying her up and leaving her behind. So this is the thing I find very interesting now. This is the shift of Matt's character, and this is the thing I've always said about Matt, at least Matt in the earlier books and in the TV show to a point, at least when I'm comparing the show to the book. Matt Cawthon in the earlier stories is a man that likes to cheat fate. He doesn't believe in prophecy, he believes he makes his own luck, even though he's Ta'veren. He's Ta'veren, he's the man that shapes the very fabric of the pattern of the Wheel of Time. And so in many ways, Matt is just trying to tempt his fate, he's trying to cheat his fate, but in the end, fate is coming to get him. And that is very clear when he meets the daughter of the Nine Moons, because in book 4, when he goes through that doorway and he is asking the 3 questions or something, he's been told that he's going to marry the daughter of the Nine Moons. And I'm quite interested to see how their relationship is going to turn out, whether or not it's going to be just a, oh yeah, Matt just has to marry her because of fate, or whether or not they actually have a genuine connection. Now, going on to my boy, Rand al'Thor, the Dragon Reborn, is bonded as a warder by Elaine Tricand, Avienda, and Min Farshur. So this is the point now where Rand is bonded with all 3 of his lovers, even though he still doesn't know about the deal that the 3 of them made, that they're happy to share him, even though he hasn't had any say in that situation at all. Also, one of the 3 are pregnant, right? I think it's either Elaine or Avienda. They're pregnant with, I'm assuming, Rand's kid. So that's interesting, and I hope that builds up to something. He hunts down Ashaman traitors in Farmading. This is also the book 2 where Rand finds out, or someone finds out, that Mazrim Taim tried to assassinate Rand, which then adds further question as to what is Mazrim Taim's end goal. Is Mazrim Taim actually a guy that's on the side of the light? Is he a Forsaken? Is he a Dark Friend? I want to know. Rand and Nynaeve Almira travel to Shadar Logoth. They are defended by Cadsuane Melandrin, Aes Sedai, and loyal Asherman against the Forsaken. Rand and Nynaeve link and use the Choden Kai. Rand and Nynaeve link and use the Choden Kai to cleanse Saidin of the taint of the Dark One, so that men who channel will no longer go mad. And again, I always find the Rand stuff the most interesting stuff, because in my eyes, that's where the main story is. And the fact now that they have cleansed Saidin, I'm so curious to see how that goes, because Rand is already going mad. Rand still has Lews Therin in his head, and I'm very curious to see that once they have cleansed the Saidin, whether or not Rand is still hearing Lews Therin and he's actually gone mad, or whether or not that's just going to disappear and he's now like temporarily or like full on healed. I don't know. I do think it's interesting. I do hope that Lews Therin isn't gone though, because honestly, Rand's interactions, his mental battles with Lews Therin is so interesting to read. One of the reasons why I have not given up on the Wheel of Time book series is because I want to see what happens to Rand. I love what happens when he's going mad, or whether he's not going mad, whether or not he's able to hold back the madness, he's healed from certain parts of the madness, or I even just love the parts where he goes fully insane and he can't control his madness, like in the previous book or the book before where he uses Calendor and accidentally vaporizes all of the armies. That to me is easily the strongest part of the Wheel of Time book series, is Rand al'Thor, his central story. He can be a bit OP at times, I won't lie, like he beats the Forsaken like that. Also, I am just waiting for Tarmon-Gaden to happen. Now, that's what it's called, right? The final battle? I'm waiting for Ba'alzamon to get free, to gain his full strength. I want to see Rand and Ba'alzamon actually fight and interact, because right now, I won't lie, Ba'alzamon's presence has been lost, because for the most part, it's just Rand fighting Forsaken, which is a shame too, because the threat of Ba'alzamon was really real in those first 3 books. Rand would always be constantly dreaming of him, and we haven't really got that since. In many ways, I feel like Rand has just been taking out the C and B listers. Where's Ba'alzamon? Where's, like, the head Forsaken? Because they're already gone. Ishamael's gone. You know, Lanfear's gone. Agenor and Balthamel are gone. Like, where are the Forsaken in the Dark One's army that Rand actually struggles to fight? Because ever since then, Rand has just been beating Forsaken like they're nothing, and I don't really feel the threat. I've been warned by Wheel of Time fans that I'm in the middle of the slog, and I can totally see why. Winter's Heart and Path of Daggers should have just been one book. I don't know if half of these new characters that Robert Jordan has set up are actually going to play a big impact into the rest of the story, and whether or not all this stuff is necessary, but in terms of the overall narrative between Path of Daggers and Winter's Heart, I feel like there is a lot of waffle and a lot of fluff. And a key thing I can point to showcase that is the fact that Matt had to disappear for an entire book and a half until he was reintroduced and actually has something to do. Like, honestly, it makes no sense. It's kind of like if you had Frodo being stabbed in Weathertop, and then he just doesn't show up again until like midway through Two Towers, and it's like, why? What happened to Frodo? Why is it taking so long to get back to Frodo? But those are my thoughts on Winter's Heart. I don't think it's bad, and in many ways, when you combine Path of Daggers and Winter's Heart together, it makes a nice book. But, at the end of the day, it is a slog. There is a lot of waffle, and whilst there are things that I do like, and we finally have something significant happen in terms of the Sidene has been cleansed of the taint, there's still a lot more stuff that can happen. I do feel like Robert Jordan is just padding out this series page length. Like, you don't need all this page length to tell this story. Maybe you do. Maybe on a second read this becomes an absolute masterpiece. But so far, though, it's good, but it's also a slog. Not to mention the fact there's nothing really in this book that's super, super memorable. But those are just my thoughts on Winter's Heart. What do you guys think about the book? Let me know in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, follow me on social media, all that good stuff. Until we meet again, see you guys next time.